Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
I certainly want to take this opportunity to, on behalf of the Union Church, to express how appreciative we are to have each one of you here. This is, of course, part 2 of Why I Don't Go. And just want you to feel welcome as we move a little slow getting in. This is a Saturday morning, and of course, Saturday plus the weather is shifting on us, but where there are 2 or 3, the word declares that he, our Christ, will be in the midst. And so thank you so much for being here today, and we certainly welcome you to the Union Church, and then secondly to this second part of seminar. I'm excited to see, to hear which direction we're going, and we want to hear from each one of you today as it relates to why I don't go. Listen, I want to take this time now to introduce the panelists who will be serving with us. And if you would listen to me closely, because they are well qualified to set and serve on this panel. First of all, and as I call your name, if you would gather up here on the platform. First of all, there is Doris Benson Chambers. She is the mother of, biologically the mother of 3 children, but Doris has adopted 7 children. So she has a heart for what we're talking about today. Doris is employed at Enos Elementary School and also serves as a youth pastor. Amen. Give Doris a hand clap of praise if you would, please. We have a husband and wife team, Josiah, the community knows him as Joe, Josiah and Kim Small. They work together, and of course Josiah and Kim has been married for 30 years, practically all of their life, and they have 2 sons, Josiah and Caleb, 25 and 21. Joe serves as an elder at Capital City Church of God and is a senior public service administrator for Illinois Department of Agriculture. Kim, she serves, of course, at the Church of God as well, Capital City Church of God as well, and they both work with the youth there. Kim she works with the Illinois Department of Public Health and has been with the Illinois Department of Public Health for 24 years and with the state for 28 years. Her background, and she is currently serving as IT security administrator at Public Health. Give her a hand clap, give her and him a hand clap of praise if you would. And then also we have with us Reverend Gene Moore. He is pastor of the Monroe Street Church, Christian Church. He is an associate dean at Lackland College, Lincoln Correction Center. Reverend Moore is married and has 2 children. Reverend Gene Moore. Yeah. And then last but certainly not the least, who led us in devotion, Reverend Stephen Ritchie. He attends, whenever he introduces himself, he makes it known that he attends Union Baptist Church, and he has been at Union Baptist Church for 62 years. He became a member of Union Baptist Church in 1968, and he tags his statement by saying he has never had a desire to be anywhere else but at Union Baptist Church. Amen. He holds a master's degree in Christian education from Lincoln University and Seminary, a bachelor's degree in mass communication from the University of Illinois, formerly Sangamon State University, and he serves here at the Union Church as a co-youth Sunday school teacher and youth pastor of youth development and enrichment. Reverend Stephen Ritchie, he has 4 adult children and 3 grandchildren. We are blessed to have a a wonderful, well-rounded panelists that we have here today, and we're going to move right into our panel discussion. As you know, July we had a part one of why I don't go, and the young adults, youth and young adults led us in that discussion whereby we were divided, and over here youth and young adult was in session and the adults were over in the fellowship hall, and much discussion went on. And so when I speak in terms of discussion having gone on, we come back now today in an effort to remedy or to find a solution. It is not our intent to judge or to debate with the thoughts or the ideas, because regardless to our opinion as to why the youth are not here, young adults are not here, their reasoning is their reasoning. And so we want to sit here today and talk open-mindedly. There are many discussions and stats that have gone out, and this is a nationwide situation whereby though you may have youth and young adult at your church, overwhelmingly every denomination has experienced a drop-off and of the numbers as it relates to attendance of the youth and young adult. And we come together with the objective of how can we get them back into the church. What can we do? We had about 5, maybe 6 panelists, young people who sat on the panel, and all 6 had different reasons for having left the church. And whatever their reasons are, the question today is how can we get them back, or what can we do to get them back? I want to start today with this panel discussion, if I might start on the end with Reverend Moore, simply by asking from the last session in Why I Don't Go part one, what did you hear? What did you hear?
Hey, good morning. What I heard was, first of all, was church hurt. I think the second thing we talked about was the church hierarchy as well. And then from the young man's perspective, pretty much economically, how can the church help him to become employed? And so those are the 3 things that I heard in that process, and look forward to talking further about what else was involved in that process as well.
Thank you, Pastor. And Ms. Chambers?
Can anyone hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I was wondering, because I've got a pretty much loud voice. I work with children. So you gain that after years of working with them. A couple of things I listened to was hypocrisy was one of them. And then, of course, cliques was another thing. And then, of course, they began to say that they just didn't believe they have to come into the church, not knowing they were the church. They didn't think they had to come in here to receive the message from the Lord. That's just the several things that I heard.
Thank you. Thank you. Pastor Ritchie?
Borrow yours. Well, I heard, again, like as Brother Pastor said, church hurt, but I also heard that they felt that the church failed them in preparing them to deal with life's experiences. They were familiar with and felt that they had a good foundation on who Christ is, but they weren't taught or given enough information to translate their faith into dealing with life experiences. So that's what I heard.
Thank you. And Kim Small?
I heard everything that they heard as well. One of the things that also seemed to stand out was that they felt that the church should be more entertaining, less boring. So it needed to kind of touch their desire to come, their interest to come.
And Brother Small, Josiah.
Yeah, one thing I did hear was the same as the others here is that there's a church hurt that happened in several different situations. But in addition to that, it seemed as though they didn't feel like no one would hear them. They couldn't get it addressed. They couldn't open up, and there was a way for them to be heard as it relates to whatever the issue was that they were hurt by. The other one was, I noticed one of them said they were very uninterested. And that was the word I think she even used, was uninterested. And she kind of just kept utilizing the same word, uninterested. So maybe what she was referring to was that somewhat boring, somewhat I just can't get into it, that type of thing. And then I remember the young man that was talking about someone not helping me recognize some of the things I needed to do, such as finance and different things like that. The church didn't offer that to him, and that was just how I think he left it that way. So those are the things, including the others that are down there. Those are the things I heard.
If I might summarize what I'm hearing that you heard, we're looking at church hurt, which covers many different areas with the church hurt. And then also I heard that the church has failed them, the young people now see disappointment because the church did not equip them for the real world, for life beyond the walls of the church, and then the concept, or the idea rather, of entertainment. It's boring here, so I need something new, or can you bring something new, something that's going to get my attention. I also heard in there, as it relates to the young people being invisible, and these are my words, invisible, that no one listens, no one hears us when we speak or when we talk. And so with those thoughts in mind, I have to propose the question to the panel is the church role to support or to condemn people, individuals, or is it for both? Is the church's role to support you, condemn you, or both? And whoever.
Well, the church is never to condemn. The word does that. The word. So we should support through biblical principles and concepts. We should not, with us having sons in their 20s, we always tell them we don't support bad decisions or bad behavior, but we love you and want to help you through it. And that's the support that we offer. That same concept should be applied to the church body, no matter actually what age it is that they come. But it seems like our younger people need, I hope this doesn't come off wrong. They tend to need a little bit more as far as emotional support to move forward in certain aspects.
Panelists, any more comments?
Go ahead.
I think the church's role is to support that person as they grow into a disciple of Christ. And then secondly, Christ leading them into a right relationship by encouraging and admonishing them. So those two things I think we're supposed to be supporting, not necessarily, and I wouldn't consider condemning anyone or not allowing them to participate or engage in that process.
I would say that we're supposed to support the youth at all times, but we do it in love. And by doing it in love, that means there's always going to be truth behind it. Because if you really love someone, you're going to tell them the truth. Now, that we can do that in a way that we extend it, where we do it gracefully, but we always have to do that, because without that, we're leading someone in the wrong direction. So we want to love them. We want to support them, never condemn a person. But we want to do that with God's truth.
I agree. I think the role is to support them, and then there's a correction at times that may need to take place, but not a condemnation. So if they're going down a path that is headed for destruction, then there's a correction that needs to take place, but we're to support them in everything in life.
And I agree with that. I can understand that, because to condemn them, all you're going to do is turn them off. They're done with you. Because the one thing they hardly want is someone to seem like they're putting them down, because that's how they would see it. Even though we would be like, I'm trying to correct you, but the Holy Spirit will convict them over a period of time. They'll
Like he
come
does
straight.
us.
One of the things that I'm hearing from all of you is basically the church is to do both. However, it's done, and here it is, what I heard was love. It's done in love. And so with that in mind, when I use this word bad apple, I'm talking about those people or that person within the church that we're not aware of, but there's someone who is driving as fast as we bring them in, someone else is driving them out. Simply because perhaps they're not aware of, or they have their different concept of love. And how to handle someone. So the question is, what can church leaders do to let membership know if they have an encounter with a bad apple, that person who has said something or done something that has caused church hurt, that has driven them out of the church? What can they do to let someone know that they can talk to someone? That what can church leaders do as we strategize? What can church leaders do to let those young people know, you can talk to us? You can talk to us.
One of the things that we did here at Union years ago was we had a variation of Big Brother, Little Brother, a variation of Big Sister, Little Sister, where a young person was paired with an adult. And so if we got, if we got back to something like that, when that bad actor, that bad apple, unintentionally or intentionally said something that would cause the church hurt for that young person, before they decided to just throw their hands up and leave, one would hope that they would reach out to their paired adult, that they could talk them through that situation to let them know that things are better, and kind of smooth over or put some salve on the wound that was caused by that one person. So if we pair an adult with a young person or a group, I think that's one way that we can help in that matter.
I agree with that, because one of the key factors here is trust. And if that bad apple is the only person they can look to, no, they need someone that they can actually talk to openly and trust, and not let them think that they're the bad apple.
Yeah. I was thinking about this when you're asking that question. I want to take it back to the leadership itself, in that maybe leadership itself needs to make sure we're authentic, we're trustworthy, we're transparent. And what I mean by that is, sometimes I think we come off as if we've never had a problem. And when we show that God saved us and he's taking care of us just like everyone else, I think kids are more receptive to come to us when they know yeah, this brother here or this sister here stumbles too. And so from that perspective, because I know that because my kids have told me that before, said that hold on, you ain't perfect, you know. and one thing we did was we actually shared with our kids some of our shortcomings, straight up, not covered up, not hiding them, because you know how we do. We only want to tell them what we want them to know. And sometimes we need to be transparent and say, you know what, let me tell you what Dad did. Dad stumbled. Dad was, this is where I failed, and I'm not giving you just the details. So I think with leadership, that helps the young say, hey, look, this person is real. What I see is what I get.
I agree. I agree.
So I'm just going to first off say this. One thing that we have to do is we have to stop looking at them and seeing them as kids. They are adults, they're young adults, and we need to recognize that we got to look way back and go, okay, when I was 22,
What was I doing?
did I appreciate or like or even be like, okay, I'm going to listen to? Because I tell, my husband always calls our sons boys. And I'm like, you need to switch that to sons. Because there's just little words. The Bible tells us all the time there's life and death in the tongue. And so therefore, now we go from a role of instruction and training to now we're going to being a support partner, walking along beside them and saying, you know what, it's okay, everybody makes mistakes. It's all right, we all made bad decisions. It's all about how we do afterwards. So we have to change within ourselves. And it's hard when you've seen kids grow up from knee-high to graduating from college, working, but they're still in the beginning parts of their life. This whole, well, you need to do this. No, they have their life. They have to make their decisions. Sometimes we have to go from telling them what to do to asking them, hey, what's going on? How you doing? How's work? When they start talking about the bad person at the job that's driving them crazy, oh yeah, been there, done that. We have to have a shift, not just but our leaders have to start encouraging the adults or let me not say adults because they're adults as well, the seasoned ones to start saying, hey, we need to recognize where they're at because all of us were there. We just have to now have different conversations. Stop telling them, start asking them.
These are all great points, and I totally agree with the concept of the mentoring program, but also with the mentoring program, you have to think about mentor is a one-on-one situation, which is in some cases in context of good, but in our context, it needs to be somewhat of a rites of passage process as well. That means if someone doesn't show up, you still have enough men and women that's available for them. But also, as leaders, we have to be open-minded. And what she's talking about, we have to teach in the church in Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 20, where it talks about restoring those persons, where you have 2 or 3 witnesses in place to be able to have that open-ended or open-minded conversation with each other to actually deal with the situation so that they have their support and everybody's actively listening. It's not I'm telling you what to do, but actually having a voice to be able to hear or what both sides are basically saying to say, hey, I am hurt and let's deal with this, and you have witnesses to witness that and record that, and how can we put something in place to move forward to restore that person. And Matthew 18 gives us those steps and process to be able to do that.
Let me summarize what I've heard here. First of all, starting with and these are my words again, Pastor Ritchie expressed basically a big brother, big sister concept whereby one looks after the other. And when I consider a family, it takes a family, a village rather, this is what it was. Those of us who were in large families, the big brother, big sister looked after the younger brother and the younger sister. Why? So no one would hurt them. Nothing would happen to them. And so this is the same concept in the church. The thing is, we just have to start working that concept. That's the same with and all this ties in together what I'm hearing. And panelists, please chime in if you would like. I'm hearing with that mentoring and that big brother, big sister, that it goes back to what we talk about, and that is relationship. Because remember, young adult has a relationship with someone in the church, then the bad apple, that relationship will help keep that bad apple from driving them out. The other thing that I'm hearing is the transparency. That is one of the original things we heard in the first session, and that is hypocrisy. That the young people look and they see, and we project the picture that we have been in the collar all our lives. We've done nothing wrong, but transparency lets them see and know that what you're experiencing is normal. So don't leave, stay right there. This is a normal transformation that we go through. And then the other thing that I heard is that leaders have got to be conscious that I'm going to use a name, that little Tommy has now grown up to be Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we must not treat Thomas
Yeah.
like Tommy.
Yep.
And we find this in our church, especially the African American church. And what happens is that the corporate world treats Tommy like Thomas. And so Thomas winds up going where he can be treated like a Thomas instead of a Tommy. And so this is what I'm hearing as we strategize. So having said all of that, and still spinning off of this bad apple concept, is the church, are we addressing the sex culture? What I mean by that, I mean single parenting, fornication, adultery, homosexuality, the whole sex culture. And this it could be a little bit of the hypocrisy as well. And being transparent. And of course, spin off of, as you talk back to us panelists, also spins off of the whole idea of condemning versus supporting.
So the first thing I'm going to kind of tie the previous into the current, because there should be a gauge that we have. And I've been blessed because I'm thankful for the relationships that I have built over the years with the young people that were young and now are adults and now have kids themselves. And I guess I want to ask the question is, when, and this is for each one of us here, how many young adults are asking any of us older adults to go out to lunch or go to dinner so they can talk? If that's not happening, then that right there tells us something's wrong in the relationship. Because only through the relationship will they listen and hear anything that they have to say. So when they start talking and they start going, you know, I'm kind of thinking I may have an attraction or this or that, they're not going to hear. If it's coming out to the group, what they may hear is condemnation or you know, you're doing everything wrong, when really they just need somebody to talk one-on-one with and start having those conversations where we're, again, anything that comes out of our mouths should not be our opinion. It should be always based upon biblical concepts and principles, and making ourselves vulnerable to say, you know what, I know I had sex outside of marriage and these were what happened. So for me, are we in the church addressing the sex culture? I say no. I don't believe that the church is. I think the church has gone silent because too many times we tend to tie our politics into the church versus what we should be doing, which is everything, we should be looking at everything through God's lenses. And so therefore, but again, all of us have made choices. God is the one who has to do all the fixing, not us. We just have to be understanding, and we have to say, hey, this is what I know, this is what I believe, this is what I believe the Bible taught, and just help them.
And I want to actually add on to what you're saying, and I agree with that. If you have young people that even want to be around you to discuss their personal life, you must be an angel sent from heaven. Because a lot of times young people, I'm sorry, I'm talking like I'm talking to him. I'm sorry, forgive me. I agree with you, because if you're around young people that really want to be with you and open up and talk to you about their personal life, you must be an angel sent from heaven, because most of the time young people, they get really, should I say, quiet about what's really going on. I had one just the other day told me that she liked men and she liked women. Well, I'm quite sure she's waiting for the expression on my face if I was going, oh, what you mean? No, I didn't go through that. I just said, okay, young lady. I said, so you're finding yourself, huh? Yeah. And she felt at ease. Then she began to talk more. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So, but I didn't start quoting 1 Corinthians or either. I didn't go off into, heaven. Yeah. And I didn't do none of that. She knows how I love the Lord. I'm always talking about the Lord. I'm singing about the Lord, so she knows this. Mm-hmm. But she felt open enough to talk to me. So I just think that we have to be open, and is really have to work with that composure. Because they're looking for any little thing to let them know, flag there, don't talk to her. Because she already going to tell you, 1 John, so I don't do that. I don't. Who am I? Who am I? Yeah. And then the last thing, I think a lot of times what goes on in the churches is when the pastor's talking about David and Bathsheba, they need to talk about it a little deeper. Just be open about it. Let them know, because the kids see it on commercials today. So you can't sit up there talking about, and when you start talking about who threw the rock, nobody threw the rock. Wonder why? Bring them in. Bring them in.
Well, you asked the question, or you posed the question, how many young people have perhaps asked an adult? Yeah. I would reverse that and say, how many adults have asked a young person, hey, let's go out to eat. Excellent. Let's go bowling. Let's have pizza. And that establishes the relationship that in turn will make them want to come back and then ask you, so you can have that one-on-one conversation. So I think as we have gotten older, and we've gotten in our silos a little bit, but we need to open ourselves up to be available, and then to extend that first invitation to them. And that way, then that allows for that conversation to take place. again, I'm gonna keep using the word relationship, and so not everyone is equipped to talk to the young people
Not-
about all these sensitive matters, and they therefore shouldn't be the ones to talk to them about the sensitive matters. That's just like the church as a whole. I don't think we're equipped to deal with mental health issues because we don't have the people that are trained to do so, to deal with people that have mental health issues. And likewise, we don't have everyone that's trained or qualified or whatever the word is to talk to the person, the young people, about whatever form of sexuality is going on, whether it's fornication, homosexuality, adultery, or whatever the case is. You have to be equipped to do that, or you're gonna say the wrong thing, drive them out. And also, I don't necessarily think that it should be done in a 45-minute sermon on Sunday morning, because you can't get into the nuts and the bolts of it. And if we're gonna have that discussion about those issues, it needs to be in a small group setting. It needs to be on a Friday night pizza setting. It needs to be after bowling. It needs to be after a movie, when those conversations take place. Because if you do it 45 minutes from the pulpit delivering a sermon, you're not going to get both sides across. You're not going to allow for the questions and answers that needs to be done. And so I think that's the wrong place to have it.
Yeah.
It needs to be had, but I don't necessarily think that's the time and place for it to be done.
Everything that's been said currently is correct. I would like to lay the foundation. I totally agree with you. It deals with relationship. I've had the privilege to serve in 2 HBCUs in the capacity of being an instructor, being an academic advisor, coordinator, an executive director, associate dean. And so I've had these conversations with students because of relationship, because relationship starts in those different contexts. And so definitely being at a college level, they're dealing with all these issues. As you said, there needs to be more collaboration and partnerships with those areas that have those expertise for us to be able to provide the actual small groups and workshops. I think we really focus on sometimes one area, but not the other area. What do I mean by that? We don't teach single parent teachings to a single parent from a male or female perspective. That's a need. We don't talk about the economics. When we do marriages, we talk about, getting married, the premarital counseling, but what about the post-counseling that needs to take place as well? So again, we need to start to provide those type of informational sessions to our young adults so they can be exposed. That's something the church has always done. We've educated our own people, and so we need to start providing those things. We have experts in our own communities to be able to provide these type of teachings, so let's put them in place to be able to provide that need for those that are in need of it. But like you said, it starts with relationships, and that's something that we can work on a day-to-day basis. And that's sometimes what we're not doing. We get a little, in our generation, we stay in that generation and we don't connect back to the generation that's coming up behind us. Well, the text talks about that we're supposed to be training up and helping those that are younger than us. And so again, I may be older than you, but there is some wisdom that I can share with you, but also be open-minded enough to be able to take what they're going to tell you, because they're going to be forthright in telling you what they got to tell you. So don't be judgmental, as she said, but just listen to what they have to say. And that's really all that they want in the first place. And so we just go from there.
I think going back to the original statement, and that is, what did we hear? And one thing was that the church has failed the young people in preparing them for the real world. And so all of this is within there. There is, again, and the other word I'm hearing is relationship. There is a phrase or a saying that how goes the leadership, so goes the church. And so if the leadership is stuck in traditions or stuck in this is the way it's going to be, my way or no way, then we're going to continue to have problems. So the question is, how can we get the leadership to shift out of first gear and into now another gear? And when we look at our churches, every denomination, we're looking at some are in first gear. I'm talking leadership now because I'm a leader. And how goes whatever my mindset is, that there may be those who disagree, but ultimately that mindset will go throughout the church, only to wake up 20 years later and all the young people are gone because that mindset stayed in first or second gear and never shifted to another gear. So how can we get, I know we've got young people in another room, we got a small group of youth leaders here, but what about the ones who stand on the platform and say this and say that? It's like one of the panelists said that this should not be dealt with in a 45-minute message. So how do we get that out to the leaders who insist on using the platform to beat up and to condemn instead of to lift up and to lead in the direction of a new day, of a new age? And that's just an open-end question, not an answer to it, just one of those questions, because we've got to shift. Because if we don't shift, anyone who's familiar with the transmission, you're not going to get very far in first gear or second gear. We've got to hit overdrive because that's where the youth are. The young people, young adults, they are in overdrive. I dare to say, and I may be aging myself now, I got to stay in the moderator seat. I dare to say that the 30-year-old today knows more than I know right now. The 18-year-old knows what I probably knew at 40 years old.
Yeah, that's about right.
The 5-year-old knows what I knew in high school. Hello?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we've got to, I'm leaving on
look
that
up.
shift.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Pastor Mike, I think that leadership is so proud of where they are or where we are now that we hold on to where we are now and we fail to remember or fail to communicate the steps that it took to get to where we are now. You know, if you're you talked about the degrees that I had. Well, it took 5 years for me to get the bachelor's. I was out of school for 20 years before I went back to get the master's. Okay, and then it took me 5 years to get the master's degree. I'm happy with it, but the steps that it took for me to get there, no one knows because I've never told anybody that it took me that long to accomplish what I did. And I think we're so, like I said, proud of where we are, that we made it, that we haven't been vulnerable or open to the young people or the church in general to let them know that God brought us through all of that to get where we are. And if we open ourselves up, and not many people are willing to open themselves up for fear of condemnation, that we never express that, so the young people never know what it took for us to get there. And I think it all goes back to relationship. And we were talking, and the thing is, how do I say? At one time, we used to have testimony service. God brought me from a mighty long way, and then somebody may have stopped you. It was like, well, how did he bring you? Did we ever tell anybody what he's done for us? You know, if you had children out of wedlock, You know, did you ever tell anybody all the struggles that God brought you through those struggles? Did you ever have to fight an addiction and say, well, you know, I had an addiction, but God brought me through that addiction? You know, incarcerated. Yeah, I made a mistake incarcerated, but, you know, he brought me through all that. We have failed to tell what God has done for us, through us, and with us to get us to this proud moment. So therefore, the young people don't think that we can relate to them because they just see us in this proud moment. And so if we open ourselves up a little bit and tell the things that God has done for us, with us, and through us to get to this proud moment, I think that opens it. It makes the leadership more relatable. It makes the leadership more authentic. Because you're in the church leadership, you're talking about God, God, God. Okay, well, what has God done for you? And you're in a position to tell what God has done for you and how God has used you. And so therefore, the young people that may have, you know, flailing in the water, so to speak, and they say, well, and they are able to say, well, you know, Reverend Richie did this, Stephen Richie, and look where he is now. There's hope for me. So I just think we need to instill hope in them by telling them what hope was for us.
Just maybe a week ago, I had visited a church. It's none of the churches that are here. And I went in, and when I went in, I looked around, and I was the youngest person there. I'm 55. And it made me think, and I started thinking, what's happening? And then I start to think, maybe there's a lot of traditions that we have that we need to go look at. We need to evaluate. Because I think there's things that we're doing, we've gotten comfortable, and what we've done is we've pushed other people away with our comfortableness. And one of the things I even thought about is, I know as I grew up, and even today, we in regards to coming to church, you always dressed up. What if you don't want to?
Or what if you don't have the clothes to?
And then just a simple thing like that to start evaluating, because some people won't come because that's what you're supposed to do, and I don't have that situation, or I choose not to do that. And in reality, dressing up to come to church, that's wonderful, but it doesn't make you godly. So I just thought about that, because when I was in this church, I was wondering what's happened. If I'm the youngest person in here, something's wrong. Something's wrong. So I think we may need to look at some of the things that we do that are more really just traditions that we created because, you know, we didn't have anything when we was little, and the best thing we could do, we could go to church and dress up. Well, we're not where we were when we were little anymore. We're not there. So I think some of this distancing and coming together is evaluate some of these traditions and things that we have in the church and make some adjustments.
I think we're going to have to be more creative than the enemy. It's that we wrestle not with flesh and blood. We already know what's going on. And we just seem to just cower down to him. We got to stop. Because what's exciting to our young people, it's not exciting to us. We became boring. And that's how the young people see us. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. They don't do them to sit there and talk about you. Make you feel bad. When you come out, you feel bad. We don't want to do that anymore. No, we don't want to throw a party and have confetti all over the place either. But we do need to find a way so we can tap into that, you know, infiltrate what's going on. I look at young kids today, I see them all the time. I'm surrounded by them. But they keep coming back to me and hugging me and wanting to be around me. I wonder why. Because I'm old school. I believe in, excuse me, may I? No, we don't talk like that. And why'd you say that? You think they'd be through with me, but something else going on. It's some light they looking at. So I don't know. Maybe the light's gone out. As we say, maybe the lights, we need to turn it back on. Because our kids are in the dark right now. They don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Some of them, not all of them. So I just think right now we need to find a way to turn the light back on and get them back up in here. We need them.
Amen.
They don't think we need them, but we do.
No, we do.
Speaking of that, and it could be that the answer is giving them something to own. You know what I mean? Giving them something to own in the church. Put them in charge of something. Let them have ownership of something instead of us, in leadership. Put them in leadership over something.
You're not talking about giving them a key, are you?
I'm sorry?
You're not talking about giving them the key, are you? Just kidding.
If it's a 2-key lock. Oh, okay. But give them, allow them to participate in owning something. They own this part of the service. They own this ministry. If it survives or fails, this you. Give them something instead of this just coming and being talked down to or talked to. Let them have the input and then accept their input and use their input.
Mm-hmm.
That could be the
I like
that
that.
could be the key as well.
I like that too.
So I want to talk about the spark of desire for for young people to come. And so I know that we're on leadership. And so I think about my kids. And, I'm sorry, our sons.
There you go. There you go. Beat me up. Beat me up all night.
We heard it.
Beat a brother down.
But one of the things I remember is when we used to sit in the back, we had two very different ones, and one would say, we taught our sons to be critical thinkers. So, they're listening to the message, and our oldest one would be like, what? So he's actually talking to me while I'm sitting beside him, and he may, there may be others, and they're just like, oh my God. Because he's like, where are they going with this message? What is that? How does that even apply to me? Then he would go, okay, well, here we go. I don't want to say it's circus time, but he would start saying, okay, there's so-and-so, they're going to go. Okay, here's going, so-and-so's going to go next. Then this one's, and so this, we're back to the authentic. We're back to leadership has to be real. That's one of the things I appreciated about my father-in-law, Reverend Small. Reverend Small would say, look, this is what I did. Don't do it. But, if you do it, I'm telling you now, God will forgive you if you're honest and you'll go back to him. As leaders, we have to get out of the mindset. I always try to go back to, I remember when Joe and I first got married, my dad said to us, it doesn't matter what's going on in the house. Nobody outside should ever know. And I thought, that's something that we at the church do. Whatever's going on, we got to mask it, we got to hide it, and we give this illusion that all is well. And all that does is for our young adults, they now know all isn't well. They know from their own lives that stuff is going on. So they're trying to figure out, well, if this stuff is happening with me, none of that stuff ever happened to them. They're not. So we, from the pulpit down to all of the leadership, we have to start. And again, you don't have to tell them all the stuff, but
Some can't be told.
some things need to stay in the closet.
Right where it is.
But just letting them know
Yeah,
that we got a closet
yeah.
is still important, an important step in getting them to go, because right now, it's a us and them. And we have to get rid of the us and them. It's a we. It's just we, like you mentioned, what they know. There's stuff that my kids know that I'm just like, what? And there's stuff that I go, that they go, really? Yeah, Mom? And it's just the fact that if we don't open up to create the trust, we can never get to the one-on-ones. We can never get to the sessions where they're able to respond back to us and talk to us. And then sometimes we just don't need to say nothing except for ask questions. Sometimes we just need, so really, how did you get there? Or why do you believe that? Or why do you think that? But leadership has to be more, say, transparent in one sense, more open, more vulnerable, to create that trusting environment.
Let me try to tie all together what I've heard about as an introduction. We heard one thought about boring, need more entertaining, something that's going to keep my attention. These are the words. And so based on that, and that's where Kim left off, spark of desire. That's where she was saying, giving, it's kind of like the kid that does not like broccoli, but if you put cheese on it, I'll eat the broccoli. It has just become more desirable, tasteful. And Pastor Richie said, give them something to own. Again, spark of desire. If I have an if I take ownership of this, whatever this is, then I feel like I have a place there. I heard also we've got to be creative, because if you remember, my original question was, how do we get the leaders to shift out of that traditional gear? One of the things when I learned how to drive a Standard, I learned that you don't always have to hit the clutch. If you play with the RPMs, you can shift without hitting the clutch. And some of you looking at me kind of cloudy there, but if you rear it up and then shift, you can go into the next gear. And so the creativity there is what I see. We've got to be creative as to what works for us. Another thing that we heard at the beginning of the question was proud. The leadership has become proud, and in that proud, I also heard comfortable, because when I'm proud of what I have accomplished, then I become comfortable, not realizing that everything around me is changing. I'm so into me and what I have until I miss that I've lost all the others, and that is that proudness. So we've got to raise some awareness with the leadership. And when I say that, I'm going back now to talking about spark of desire, vibe, open-mindedness, spark. What does this mean to the leaders of your church, of the church? Let me say it like this. What? Spark. Because for some, spark means that, and I think Brother Small mentioned it, about moving from the tradition of the way we dress on Sunday. And so for one, spark may be, we have a dress down Sunday. Why do you have a designated Sunday, period, whether it's dress down or dress up? If you have a dress down Sunday, that means all the other Sundays are dress up Sundays.
Yep.
So why do creativity and spark, Why do you have to name it anything? Why can't you just come?
Yeah.
And these are just questions that's thrown out there. I'm not steering us anywhere, just to lead into conversation. And so vibe, open-mindedness, spark. Open-mindedness could be for some that, we give you a class. And so again, how can we go and relate to those who stand on the platform to let's move into another? Brother Pastor, let's get some vibe, some spark.
So first of all, that means that leadership has to recognize that things are going to be uncomfortable. They're going to have to be uncomfortable because, and first of all, I want to acknowledge this. So, you know, in the corporate world, our executive leadership, you know, there's different levels of management. You know, you have executive, senior, middle, lower class management, and then you have the worker. And I would always tell my, my senior management, I'm just a chicken pecking on the ground. And you're the eagle soaring up in the air. I see this little section. This is what I see. But you see miles and miles. You see the big picture. Leaders see the big picture. And a lot of times when we're dealing with people, we tend to see what is in our scope of view. And so that's what we focus on. We focus. So when leaders are looking about what we can do to change, they're looking at the big picture, not just how it impacts this group, how it impacts this group, but how it impacts the organization as a whole. So first of all, knowing that, leaders now have to become uncomfortable because things have to change, because the pressure to keep traditions going are there. But when we start talking about how we have to invest and make things different, there are people that when, and here's an example, people who go when it comes time to music. There are people that want choirs. And then there are people that want groups. And then there's people that just want us to play songs. Right? So you got this leader who has to deal with
How you gonna make this work?
this, and this. And now you're asking the question, how do we, because this is something I said before, how do we get multi-generations to worship collectively together? So we're talking about a spark, a vibe. And the hardest thing to do for leaders is to say, okay, we gotta bring all these parties in and have this conversation, because leadership tends to make the final decision. And so when we're talking about a spark, we're talking about sometimes the spark has to start off little. It doesn't have to be like a what's that thing? Fire,
Bonfire,
the fireworks.
the big one, yeah.
You know, it might be a little sparkle. I think that's what the kids used to do.
Yeah.
I never got to go in.
We remember.
But so, I mean, for me, it has to be something that is small that will start a chain reaction to where other people are starting to say, oh, that was pretty cool. Even though it's outside of my, you know,
Area.
my area or my comfort zone.
Yep.
But then the more we do it, the more they start to say, hey, but where does a lot of times the the vibe or the spark comes from, it's coming from our young adults who are saying, hey, can we do this? And instead of always just saying, no, we can't do this, sometimes we got to go back to the young adults, hey, that's not a bad idea. However, tell us how we can stair step to this goal that you guys have. So the spark, I think, is it's initiated sometimes through the advice of our young adults.
So it was written, sort of said.
And of course, that the whole concept is that if you heard what Reverend Small said, is that the voice must come from the young adults as it relates to, I dare to say, a recommendation. Why are we not? Can't we do this? Let's do this, whatever this is. Let's break. Let's break. Let's go straight back into the session of discussion as we move forward to Why I Don't Go Part 2. We left off on some things, and I want to propose the question as we open this second session up, second part of today's seminar. Do church leaders know how to communicate with generation, with Gen Z, and also the millennials, understanding that Gen Z is perhaps 10 years old to 25 years old, and millennials being 26 to 41 years old. And so the question is, do church leaders know how to communicate with that group of people, those two groups of people? Help us further understand. I'm 41 years out of high school. So the millennials would be my children, and Gen Z would be my grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, can this leader, those leaders who fall in our category, can they relate to these two groups of people? Communicate, rather. Go ahead. And I say, I don't want to confuse us on words. I said, can they relate? But I want to stick to communicate. Communication. Okay. Go ahead. Sure.
Yes, we can, but it's the communication style that we use. So we can't communicate, but we need to understand the communication styles. What I mean by that. So your millennials, they want a dialogue. They require like an open mind, open ears, open heart. And in the dialogue, neither party guides the other, but both are walking together. So that's kind of like that's what millennials, that's how they think, and that's how we have to communicate with them. And as leaders, we can, but we have to go back as leaders. And I think for you and I, for example, we've read something and have access to something now that we need to go back and reread and become more able to communicate across a lot of different generations. Secondly, the Gen Zs, which is my children's age, and I have two of them, their life stage requires a relationship, a relational communication. So it's understanding what generation communication style do they want in order to be able to communicate with them. Can it be done? Yes. We just have to retrain ourselves as leaders to be able to do that. And we can do it. And I suggest that we do it. And I think that's us being open-minded and being lifelong learners. If we, like you said, if we're going to keep up with the future. And so we have a responsibility as leaders not only to teach ourselves, but also to teach our leaders on how to be able to communicate a lot more effectively in communication styles moving forward.
In addition to that, I was thinking in terms of when I think of my sons, I got one of them in today. The way that they communicate, meaning the days of the phone calls all the time, those are over with them. I've noticed that you just have to use the electronic methods and express things. There's nothing wrong with a phone call, but we're not going to get what we got when we were younger. So we have to use what they're using. We have to use the electronic methods, whether it's, I know some of us don't like it, but we got to move out and start getting on their platforms. And if we don't, we're not going to be talking to them that much. So I know that that's one thing we just got to do the activity in their world.
I'm going to say absolutely. I feel like I'm really loud. I'm going to say yes, absolutely. We can communicate with the Gen Z and the millennials. It was.
They can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I realized that, and I'm thankful that you actually made that difference in between dialogue versus relational, because my niece, she likes to have these debates when we're communicating, and she's 32. And it's very interesting when we're kind of going back and forth, because I'm like, why are you asking my opinion when you really don't want my opinion? You're really telling me what you want, so just tell me what you want. And so it's a good point, because we really have to learn really the difference when communicating, because, if you say you're asking me a question, I'm thinking you really want me to respond. And so it has taken me a while to realize she really doesn't want me to respond. She wants me to really just listen. But at some point in time, we have to say, however, we have to somehow get some kind of injection in there into, again, the biblical principle or perspective, because all of our responses should always be through God's lens.
So the actual source that I'm using is a book that you really need to get, which is called Speaking Across Generations by Dr. Daryl Hall, which is a very good book for leaders to actually get, for us to begin to understand how to communicate and what type of communication styles you communicate over generations. So please get that book. It's a very, very good book. Dr. Daryl Hall. And the title of the book is called Speaking Across Generations.
Any more comments, panelists? No. That, of course, communication goes back to relationships. Jesus met people where they were, rather than pulling them up to where he was. He met them where they were. Example, and I'm speaking in general, Mary Magdalene, he met her where she was. He did not try to get her to be something that she was not. The woman caught in the act of adultery, he met her where she was. And so, in fact, if you research the scripture, whenever Jesus went to church, they usually put him out because his way was unlike everyone else's. And so I just wanted to, as we continue to discuss this, wanted to bring that illustration in. I think someone said, and what I heard was use their platform versus us as leaders trying to get them to use our platform, that we use their platform. And it goes back to, again, the communication takes place because of relationship. In the first session, I think Ms. Chambers, Sister Chambers, Pastor Chambers, you were talking about being young people coming to you and being able to talk to them. And I think someone else says, I think maybe Pastor Ritchie said that everybody is not qualified to talk to minister to. And so those who can reach those, we must reach them where they are, that having that communication ability. And so leaders, the question being, are church leaders, does church leaders know how to communicate with those generations? I think there could very well be a gap there. But it's about putting the right people, again, equipping the saints, putting the right people in the gap to close the gap, if I might say.
I just wanted to add on something. I'm hearing you, and something else is coming to my head. I think about gang leaders, how they reach their recruits. A lot of times, I'm hearing a sense of belonging. Respect. You think like gangs? Yeah. Because something's going on there with that leader, how he's able to approach those young people and make them feel important. So somehow they're letting down their guard, because most young people have a guard up, because they're protecting themselves the best way they know how. And sometimes it's them being kind of maybe violent. But I just think somehow that sense of belonging is so important that I feel like I belong. It's missing. They got to go and get it somewhere else.
And the other thing with that is, keeping on that same vein, they see what that potential gang member is missing or is lacking, and they offer what they're missing. And so they offer love if they feel that they are unloved. They offer a sense of belonging, like you said, and so the gang leader is able to tap into what that young person is lacking.
Yes.
And so I think that's what we would have to do as far as communication, is to see what they're lacking. But in order for us to know that, they have to communicate that to us.
Because that is that generation we're speaking of,
Right.
both of them.
Right.
And this is what the gang people, the gang leaders are going after. They know how to infiltrate that group and come up. I mean, you're looking at kids in second grade throwing down signs, and you look at them like, what do you know? But anyway, so I'm just saying something about the sense of belonging, feeling important.
So to communicate as a leader, to communicate with Gen Z and the millennials, to communicate with them, I've got to make them feel like they give them a sense of belonging. I've got to have a place for them. I've got to enable them to claim ownership. This is mine. I feel a part of whatever it takes for us to do those things.
I just want to add on, you did it just a few moments ago when you were getting ready to come back and reconvene. And when you came up to my granddaughter and you started talking about her hair, you said, when can I get my hair done like that? Right then and there was that acknowledgement of my being. Mm-hmm. You know, that meant, so she's heard people call you pastor in here, because she kept on asking, who's the pastor? Where the pastor? Then here you come and ask her about her hair. That just sent her on up in another, level. Mm-hmm. You took time to talk to her about her hair. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, it's a simple thing as that.
And what we just heard, a simple thing is that, and I think leadership has missed the simplicity of it. Just simple, the simple things. I want to ask this question because last session I heard it come up, maybe with Sister Small, I heard it come up. Has church politics caused the church to dismiss, discount, discredit, or leave out upcoming generations? And when I say church politics, I mean you're new. You haven't been here long enough.
you're not a part of a particular family in the church. You're too young. The church politics. Don't everybody speak at once.
That may come back to some of the tradition stuff that we have in the church in regards to the families that are here. This family's been here forever, all those types of things. We need to revisit some of these things to make sure they're not expanding out and becoming the church. And I think that pushes people away because they don't feel like, well, I don't really have much family here, so how will I become part of something when the only way in is through a family or whatever that thing is that people ascribe to, other than the fact that I know that I've been born again, set free, and leaving that and going to these other things.
You know, there's one of the things that, you know, we were talking about over at lunchtime is people, whether you're churched or unchurched, people have an expectation of what the church is supposed to do and how the people are supposed to act. And so this expectation is there. And I know I said it before about becoming uncomfortable. One of the things when being uncomfortable is sometimes we have to go outside. Okay, so their car broke down and they need to get to the laundromat or they need to go to the grocery store. Sometimes it's not doing stuff on our schedule. Sometimes we have to do something to help them. Joe says all the time, my husband says all the time, we have to invest in people.
Yeah, you do.
And when we don't invest, and I see that you have a need, but then I'm not willing to help you with your need. What am I really saying to you? What is the message that those young people are going to say? They're like, okay, Miss Kim's been working, she old as dirt. You know, she has a car, she can, you know. And so if they reach out to me and I go, no, don't get me wrong, there may be some boundaries. I told my husband the other day, I let somebody use our car. You know, he was like, that may not be the wisest thing because if they hit somebody, but at some point in time, we have to, and I'm not, first of all, let me clear that up. I'm not activating, I'm not, help me out, saying that that's what you're supposed to do. Don't do what I did because I didn't think of the consequences. I just thought about, I need to show God's love in a manner that they could see it. And so, therefore, you know, there are times when we, in leadership, and just in the church body, we have to invest in people. Because that's exactly what Jesus did. When you gave the example of Mary Magdalene, what did he do? He met her where she was at. God has met each and every one of us where we were at. And that's how we became so enamored with who he is and how much he loves us, is because he did meet us where we were at. And therefore, what does he call us to do? He tells us to do the same thing, to meet them and to show them the love where they're at. And so I think there is, even though we're talking about communication, that's still that nonverbal communication that we're giving. I know we were talking about, you know, how we talk to them, but we have to have that nonverbal communication as well.
Any more comments?
The church has to encourage an upward movement into leadership through participation. I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier, of having youth, young adult at the table to be able to participate in ministry, as you said. Doesn't matter what family you came from, doesn't matter how long I've been here, but as I come into the door, I should have the hope of the right to participate in whatever ministry, if I've been trained, gone through whatever you want me to go through, to participate in ministry. There should be no barriers. And so I think there's been a lot of barriers as we talked about politics, and there's been a lot of harm because of the perceived politics in the church. Let's put it that way. And so again, if you give them the opportunity to participate, believe me, they're going to show you that they're able to do what you've called them to do, and then give them the support to do what they need to do as they're encouraged to be able to do what it is that they are called to do. And so again, I think that's an application of what we can actually put something into practice moving forward, if that makes sense.
I'm hearing over and over as we get back to the basics, back to the same thing that we said earlier, a sense of ownership, making them feel a part of, and so this is where the give them an opportunity. Give them an opportunity. And so that's a key as we move forward. I'm hearing this is a key element for us to reclaim, to bring back the youth and young adults. I want to ask this question. If you recall, the first why I don't go, that our panelists claimed a relationship with God, but not with the local church. The whole concept of why I don't go. I don't go to the local church, but I have a relationship with God. How do we move them from the routine of relationship to understanding the local church? Having a relationship with the local church is having a relationship with God, if I might say. It's evident that because comments are, and I'm remembering off my head, comments are, oh, I meditate, I watch TV, I listen to music, I spend time with God, but I don't go to church. And so moving from that concept to this concept.
I would say if we look back and kind of a little different than what we were talking about before, saying where family kind of excluded people because you're in a family. When I think of the church now, and then I think of the church back when I was young, the church was part of my family. Meaning I didn't know any different. I had brothers and sisters, but when I thought of my brothers and sisters, that was my family. But the church, I was intertwined with the church, meaning my life and things I did. And when I thought of the church, I thought of the church as just an extension of family, but it's just my family of God along with my blood family. I don't know if that's still there anymore. I don't know if that connection. I even remember when we would go on family vacations, the church was still with us. We went to church. We visited places. We thought that was part of life. I don't know if we've got that intertwined anymore. Family and church, they were synonymous. They were the same thing to me. And I'm thinking, I don't know if we're just becoming distant people. We've got all these programs, but we're distant. And I think that would be one of the things that family, that church is part of my family. I do things with it all the time, and that's just me.
I can add to that, Joe. Growing up, all of our activities centered around the church and our youth group. And so we went to the games together, we went bowling together, we did activities outside of the church. Yes. And therefore, it was nothing to think that, you would come to church on Sunday. And so I think maybe the things that have changed is the church is contained in the four walls of the church, but the church doesn't involve the young people outside of the four walls, you know. And so I think that if we, like I said before, if we attended their games or we did activities outside of the church with the young people, they wouldn't have an issue with physically coming to the church to join corporate worship, because it was just the same group of people and we met their needs outside of the walls. I know because it was an idea that Sister Thompson had and Sister Urson had. We took the kids fishing, the younger kids fishing, and we taught a little lesson after the kids got through fishing at Washington Park. And some of the feedback that came back, they really enjoyed that. And so we had a Sunday school lesson or really a study about Christ on the fishing banks of Washington Park out there at the lagoon. And so doing things like that. And so then they talked about it once they got back to church on Sunday. And I think some of them are looking forward to doing something like that again. So it's those type of activities I think we have to do. And as you said before, we have to invest in them. Therefore, it wouldn't be, I don't think they're going to have an issue with coming to church if we did something outside the walls of the church.
Any more comments from the
It costs us
panelists?
something too, not just emotionally, it's going to cost us money sometime. And we just can't allow something like that to keep us from what God would want us to do.
And I'm glad you mentioned cost. It should cost us something. It has to cost us. It has to cost money. It has to cost time. It has to cost emotion. It has to cost determination. It has to cost us something because they're worth whatever cost it is.
That's good, that's good.
I remember talking to our sons and asking them, and I love doing my oldest son's hair because it's our time for us to just talk. I mean, I don't really like doing his hair, but I love the time that I get with him because I'm doing his hair. And, you know, and sometimes when our youngest one would come home and he would be in there with us and we would be having a conversation. And I remember saying, you know, I really wish you guys would go to church somewhere. And there was silence. And I said, however, I understand that you are now living your life and you have to do what is best for you. All I could do is encourage you all to know that the best thing ever is, and I said, and it's not what your dad and I say, it's what you see, how God has blessed us when we've followed in his footsteps. And I'm the first one to tell anybody, I am human. Last week I was mad at Joe Small, and everybody knew. You know, I didn't do the whole, like my dad said, which is, you know, however it is. I am me, and I have flaws. But the same thing I would do is I would turn around and I would say, but God doesn't like that. God doesn't want that. God, you know, I need to forgive. I need to let go. I need to move past it. I need grace and mercy. And so when we're talking about those relationships with God, but not with the local church, I believe a lot of that stuff, but they won't say, is from church hurt because of what people have said. Some people say stuff and they don't even realize how mean-spirited it is. You know, I had someone, personally, I think both of my sons are very handsome. But when you say something about one is really this and you don't acknowledge the other, all of those little things are, you know, as my sister says, they're like little pennies you're putting into a bank that the person carries around and we don't even know what we're doing when we make the comments that we make. And so
when you ask that question, I sometimes go, can we really is there really something we as humans can do to get them to come back, to get out of what's safe, what's not hurtful, what's not harming me? These people, they can't impact me if I'm not there. And I will say to, mine as well as other young people, you want that paycheck, so you go to work and you endure stuff. And how do you get through it? Well, sometimes they go, well, I switched jobs. Well, you may have to switch churches. But chances are, whatever you run into your job, whatever that was there, it's probably going to show up at another job.
Yep.
Whatever's at one church is probably going to show up at another church. So for me, this is really an intriguing question, because I don't know if there's anything that we can do except for encourage them and know that the closer they get with God and the more they submit and the more they die to themselves and let God build them, that I believe is going to be the thing that draws them back. But again, we too have to be the example of, okay, we ain't perfect, we got these issues going on. I'm 56 years old and I'm still making mistakes. And I had to go and ask God for forgiveness and I was a little embarrassed because of how I acted. But when it comes to moving from that routine to a local church, is complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying is that I want to encourage our young people to first get in community with someone. That's number one. And once you get in community, you want to seek a deeper relationship with God at that point. But it starts with the community. It kind of goes back to what you said. It takes the village. Mm-hmm. But the village may not be several people. It may be just one person at first. But then the village then becomes several individuals that can actually impact that one person. And so we have to realize we have to put discipleship models in place to where not only that we're bringing them in, but how we're retaining them as well. Mm-hmm. And so, as you said, there's going to take individuals to come around that one person to be able to do that, to undergird them, to help strengthen them along the way. Secondly, once you become a disciple, you got to connect with the community for edification and growth. Mm-hmm. And so once you've gotten to the other side, that I'm not just a new member, but now I am a learner of Christ, and I have those persons around me. That's why it says it's not always mentoring. For us as a community, we're based upon community, not necessarily individuals. Mentors and more individuals. I'm not against that, but I'm saying for us, I'm going to say it again, we need more rites of passage programs, and our elders need to begin to motivate and encourage that to actually help us to disciple our young people through a process to where they feel comfortable, they're supported, and then they're being transitioned from one stage to another stage. And that'll be able to do that. Because sometimes pastor's not going to always be able to be there, but then the deacon can pick up or another youth advisor can pick up. So you have all those different leaders in place that the pastor's not always leading everything, but you have other leaders that you're developing and can support and lead in that process as well. Mm-hmm. So the paradigm or the model is a discipleship model that we need to have in place in order for it to be a routine relationship.
I think the other thing is, do we even know what their expectation out of the church is? We have an expectation because of our age and we've been in it, but do we know what they expect out of the church? And so how are we going to meet their needs or get them in and keep them in if we don't know what they expect out of the church?
And I think that starts in a new members class in the beginning. So that's undergirding and teaching them in the beginning and building relationship at that point And then when they move from that stage, then it becomes a discipleship stage. So I'm not just being taught at this foundational level. I'm going through a process, a long, extended process, but somebody's walking along with me. And so I may start off with an individual here, but then it becomes more of a body as I go throughout the process. So what I'm saying to you is, yeah, we do a very good job of getting you in here in the beginning, but what do you do with me throughout the whole process to keep me here? Right. And that's what we're talking about. So you got to put things in place and teachers in place and offering things in order to continue to keep them throughout the process. At the same time, teaching them more about Christ, and the more I'm around others that are like Christ, I become like Christ as well. But I need other folks that are a little bit stronger than me to help me throughout that process.
Right, because that's what I heard last time and this time is, what some of them said was they know about Jesus because we taught them about Jesus, but do we teach them anything or do we show them anything beyond Jesus?
Right, and that's what I'm talking about. And I think we're going to talk further maybe in the next question of some strategies that we can possibly put in place and some things we've already talked about. And like you said, it's asking them what their needs are, because their needs are different from somebody's needs at 60 years old. Yeah. And so, like you said, having the opportunity to be at the table, surveying them or asking them, what do you need? And then putting models and putting ministry around what they're telling you that they need. So like the young man said, I need this. Well, put something in place in order to provide that need for me, because he ain't the only one that need it. There's other people that need it too, but the church is not providing that for me. And we should be, and that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I think we're on the same page.
That certainly, go ahead.
Excuse me, to add on to what you both are saying, I agree with you, but to go a little deeper with that, because our children today, and I'll say our young people, they're faced with certain situations out there that we were never, ever, never, ever. But how can they take those situations today and equate them to the love of God? Because love is an action word. And a lot of kids today, young people, will ask you, where's this love at? Where's this love you speak of all the time? Is that love? A lot of people chimed in like that around the 9/11. That's all I heard. Where is God at? Where was God at? You think young people weren't listening then? They were listening. And here we talk about it every Sunday, and they still saying, where's love? So I just want to add that on.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for what you're saying.
On that, as we move into another question, that holding that thought, Sister Chambers, where is God, where is love, and then Pastor Ritchie's comment, what are their expectations of the church, which is synonymous to what are their needs, because what they expect from the church may not be able to deliver, or the church is not supposed to deliver. First and foremost, I think everybody always forget that the church's job is saving souls. But we sometimes our expectations are a list of things before we even get to the soul saving. And so a perfect picture is that the soul saving takes place, and then we have, as Pastor Moore declared, we have this process then, but by virtue of them not being here, that's a dead giveaway. We missed the process. We missed something there. So to get them back, we have to ask the question, what does a relationship with the local church look like? And when I ask that question, what does the relationship with the local church look like? I have to ask myself, what I'm defining and what they're defining, is it the same thing? And how do we, if it's not the same thing, how do we close that gap to make it be the same thing?
So I really truly believe that the relationship with the local church should look like it did in the past. Because things that we did in the past necessarily weren't bad. And so here's what I'm saying. When we used to do stuff together as a church, where we used to have events where we all traveled together, where we did things like we were more of a family. That in and of itself filled a lot of things that we had. There was the stuff we didn't like, the stuff we couldn't stand, the stuff we loved, the stuff we couldn't wait to do, the stuff we dreaded doing. But all of that didn't matter because we were together. And I think Pastor Richie or Reverend Moore said earlier, we started moving into silos, and we moved away from that. So from my perspective, what does a relationship with the local church look like? It should look like, I dare not say family reunion, but it needs to be a family event where we need to still come together to break bread together. We need still, you know how they used to sit, the older ones used to be like them old people, they just sitting around chit-chatting about the past, about politics, about family, about this, about that, what's happening over here, what's over there. And they used to just sit and they used to talk. And all of us probably at some point in time, we were listening to them talk because that's why we said them old people, what they, we listening to what they said. But we didn't necessarily have to be there. But don't get me wrong, there's certain things that we need to drop. We need to drop the seen and not heard part of the family structure. But there was times when we all cooked together. What they did today, the food, they were there together. And in those opportunities, there's communication, there's bonding, there's support, there's all of these things. So from my perspective, it needs to look like a family reunion, an everyday family reunion.
Do they still, I want to add on to what you're saying, do they still have pew rallies? I know, what's that?
It's been years since I saw one.
But I remember them when I was coming up. We got excited about it
Yeah.
because we knew there was going to be some chocolate cakes and there's going to be some goodies in that kitchen. Ooh, couldn't wait till they break loose and we have that. Oh, they sang all day, but it didn't matter. We still was waiting for the chocolate cake and the strawberry pop. So I'm just saying, I wonder if they still have them because that was a gathering that time. That was a family gathering. Everybody come, bring their families and the baskets and stuff. We were going to eat that day. And it lasted almost till night, but still, we look forward to it. Us, young people. Come on, we'd rather been out cutting the rug, but we were still waiting on that cake. Okay. I just wondered about it, that's all.
Well, actually, we cut the rug and still can't find it.
So
Thank you.
in a time of desocialization, this is my word, in a time of desocialization whereby everyone is on the internet or even in sitting at the table, I don't know if you've gone to a restaurant and just looked around the room, everybody's on their phone, on their cell, texting. And so at a time when when our young people have shifted into the technological age, what is it that we can do today that will be synonymous to the Pew Rally and to our annual conventions that we would get together and go to, and we was excited about being the church, the district that brought the most youth or registered the earliest. What is it in a technological society and desocialization? And I say that because 40 years, 50 years ago when I came along as a kid, if you were in the house, you had done something wrong. Now, we rush to get in the house, shut the door, and this is where I want to be, and I don't want to be bothered when I get. So what can we do at the local church that will give that excitement back, that will cause them to come back here to the church the same way we were excited about the Halloween events and the pew rallies and the lock-ins, yeah, all of that.
I'll say, I don't know what a pew rally is, but apparently it must have been something fun.
And let me jump in. They were done several different ways. Sometime a family was responsible for a pew, and it was to pack out that pew. Sometime a deacon or a choir, someone in the church was responsible for a pew or a section of pews, and their job was to rally and pack out that section, pack out those pews, and everybody would just get excited about it because sister or brother so-and-so, I'm going to beat them this time. They, when everybody know that anytime Miss so-and-so got 15 children and they got cousins and but that excitement and the momentum and
Yeah.
And then you ate.
So, I mean, so first of all, I'm going to say this. This is when we really, really need our young adults.
Yes.
Because they're in the middle. You know, most of the time they have learned how to talk to us, older people, and then they're understanding or they can still relate to what our younger ones. So, you know, those are the times that, and we feel them the most when they're missing, because we're struggling with, okay, how do we get this lesson? I mean, they're different, you know, how I communicated and as a youth teacher, how I taught them is much different. They will have ideals like, you know what, Miss Kim, why don't we do, you know, when they have the Pokemon scavenger hunt? Was that what it was? Okay, there you go.
You know,
But then, I didn't right. So just like pew rallies are over there, that's over our. But that's why we need them, because then they can say, you know what, this is something that we can do. This is how it's done, and they're there to help. When they're missing, when they're we value them, and when they're missing, our gap, you know, it's the kind of like that little crack in the cement. It gets bigger. That gap, that crack becomes a gap because what fills in is missing, whether it's sand or whatever over a period of time, it's missing. And so in our local church, what's missing is what they add and they bring. Because we've said it multiple times, the communication or the message never changes, but how you communicate the message does. And so therefore, yes, style changes.
Yeah.
And so therefore, you know, even the language has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I just happened to look at Ann when I was like, pew rally, she was like, I don't know either. But even with all of us, you know, for us, for the local church to get and be effective in the community, in the manner in which Jesus wanted us to, we have to make sure that we are creating that spark, that desire, but that desire comes from that input, from that group. And then that leadership is saying, hey, how does this impact the organization overall?
So leadership, again, allow young people to actively participate and engage in ministry.
Yeah.
If you want to change, if you want to grow, if you want to edify, that's how you do it. And once you do that, you'll see your ministries grow. You'll see them come back because they want to participate. All they're asking us to do is open up the door and allow them to do it. And so I just want to continue. That's definitely on point, what she definitely just said.
Well,
And to be consistent, not just one time.
well, and then here's one that perhaps might be a harder pill to swallow for the church leadership. There's a lot of competition out there.
Yes, sir.
And back in the day, we didn't do anything. There was nothing done on Sundays but go to church. Now there's all these activities that you put your kids in that are on Sunday. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, and what their church ended up doing was they met the young families where they were, and they have a Saturday
There you go.
late, not night service, but after all the activities are done on Saturday, because there's other football and soccer on Sunday, they have a young adult family service on Saturday evening, because that's what worked for the young people at their location. So on Sunday morning, it was still the traditional service, but they saw an abundant increase in attendance on their Saturday evening, late afternoon services, because that's what fit into the schedule of their young families. And so because of all the competition, and we say you got to meet them where they are,
Right.
those families latched on and appreciated the fact that a service was created that worked around their schedule. And so you have two services now. You have an abbreviated kind of service on Saturday that, still consisted of the words, still consisted of singing, but it was that dress down kind of thing that you mentioned before, because that's what fit those families at that church in that location. And then Sunday morning was still the traditional Sunday morning, not necessarily as far as dress, but still the 11 to 1 time that most black churches meet. But their church flourished and thrived and is still thriving because of their Saturday evening service for the young families. And so the question would be, are we really wanting to meet them where they are? It's going to take change from what we're accustomed to.
And they must understand, as you're speaking, that they're still part of that Sunday, that meet on Sundays. Because they don't need to feel like they're different from that group that's meet on Sunday.
Right. Well,
I'm still a part of Wish Church on Sunday, even though we do it on Saturday.
They now claim ownership of the church. They have their
Okay, yes,
relationship.
okay.
We're talking about relationship.
Yes, yes.
They have the relationship with God
Yes,
and the church.
Yes.
They just meet on Saturday.
Yes.
So you ask them what church they go to, we go to Baptist
yes,
Church.
I'm still a member.
And they love it.
Yes,
And so it just
I agree.
takes a change, and it says, are we wanting to change to meet that particular need?
Stick inside.
Yeah, no, that was a good stick. I appreciate that.
The leadership must be willing to leave their comfort zone, to deviate from their traditions. And there's a thin line there on what, even on this panel, a thin line from what Brother Small called tradition, what Sister Small calls tradition, Reverend Ritchie calls, there's a thin line there. But the leadership must be willing to deviate from the comfort of it and allow the young people to, if I might say, they are not
what is it we always get up and say that our young people are church of today and leaders of tomorrow? No, they are the leaders of today. And the church, they've always been the church. And so they are the leaders of today. So let them lead. I want to get into some questions that have come from the audience, and because we kind of summed up everything else here. We left off on basically what the local church looked like, and that's where and within that we've talked about trying to get both male and female back to church, just not just the black male, but all that age period. And so it's important that we, as I looked and I listened to us talk about what we used to do, my mind went back, and when we talk about Gen Z and we talk about millennials, we're going back to 1981. The millennials were born in 1981. Just quickly use your sanctified imagination. What were you doing in 1981? So,
Thank God.
yes. So we're saying, and I only took us back there that quick. And somebody, what's that? Back to the Future. and that's really what we're saying, because goodness, cell phones didn't even exist.
No.
We had 3 channels on the TV.
Yes.
And so this is what we're dealing with now. This is the competition that we are up against. So the church is at a challenge, and so what can we do? Still, that's the question, and we've heard many comments. What can we do to bring them back without compromising the gospel? And that's some denominations, and I don't even want to get into that. They have their mottos and their slogans, but I believe strongly in meeting them where they are. And then if I can get you here, and that's the key, what can I do to get you here other than a funeral? Because now I've done some, just this year, I've done some funerals that had this age hanging out of the balcony.
Unbelievable.
And so what can I do now without having the funeral that will get you here? And so here, let me, I've got to take my glasses off to read these questions. Here we have one that says, what is your definition? What do you believe the purpose / function of the church is? Panel,
So I guess that was.
If you might, I mentioned earlier that, and some may disagree with me, but number one with any church is that we save souls, and then all the other stuff is like it's like having the meat on the plate, but then all the other stuff that comes along is just that, all the way down to the dessert. And I believe in even having the dessert as well. Right. But you can't have too much dessert and miss the meat.
Right. And I totally believe that the ultimate goal of the church is to invite and have a relationship with Jesus Christ and to grow into his likeness. So therefore, that to me is what the function of the church is. Now, what that looks like. Now, read the question to me one more time.
What is your definition? What do you believe the purpose / function of the church is?
Okay, so I answered it.
And what I've discovered, y'all, and this is now 40 years of ministry and pastoring 3 churches in 3 different states. What I've discovered is that every church has its own DNA, meaning what works at this location may not work at the next location, but it all goes back to the purpose of the church is to save souls. But then I also discovered that as a leader, you can be absolutely right. You can think that you're absolutely right, only to discover later you were absolutely wrong. And being able to admit, I was wrong, let me start over. Again, let me do it again. And so when we talk about purpose and function, if you are here, help us understand what the question, what we're saying here, and may have already left, but as we work our way through here, I don't want us to just continue to beat a question that's.
But in the function, and I gave you my definition of the purpose and the function. And in that growing like Christ, there's so many different caveats to it. Because the caveat, Joe and I, when we had our kids that were younger, and we have to be careful because a lot of people will say there's cliques in the church. Now, sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's a perception because when we had younger kids and we were younger in our marriage, we fellowshipped with people that were like us. We had the commonality. And so what did we do? We talked about what our kids was doing. We talked about how do we address those kinds of things. Now, is that going to be functional for us as we're growing in Christ in our relationship and we're trying to teach our young children about Christ? And then all of a sudden somebody says, well, you need to be part of this group. Well, we are older people that are da-da-da-da-da. Well, they're no longer, our commonalities are different. And so therefore, we're not, the needs were different. And so therefore, when I say we grow in Christ, all of those different groups were growing in Christ. It's not necessarily that we were always side by side in every situation through our walk with the Lord in the local church. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And you did that well. I think we all can agree as we have been in church and we have moved from, and these are my words again, from clique to clique, from group to group. And I was in general, I was in the group, the clique that I was in because we had things in common. That was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Now I'm in the group, the clique that I'm in because we have things in common.
Right.
The difference is with the young adults, I left the church before I went. What I should have done was move from the group I was in to another group, but instead I left the church. And so I need to get them back and put them in a group if it means you creating a group that you and everybody in your group have the same things in common. And I'm going back to, I'm getting churchy on you now. Acts chapter 2, they had all things in common. Relationship, what is the true heart of the matter?
I don't understand.
I'm trying to understand the questions.
Now, for the sake of record keeping, I'm just asking the question.
Okay, just ask it.
Okay. And then the next question, still under relationship, what is love, support, and accountability?
What does it look like?
Just ask the question.
Just what is love?
Well, that's kind of like what I just said earlier about love. You know, you say God is love, and then there's things that's happening in one's life, they're not understanding it, and they say, how could, if there's such a loving God, why would he do such and such? So, you know, that word love just thrown around so many different ways. So I guess that would be a question on someone's mind. What is love? Or we don't want to say what Tina Turner said. But anyway, so this is where the young people are today.
I would have to say on that, when we're talking about love in the real sense from God, it makes me think of the fact of what and who he is to me and what he did for me. And when I look at myself and the wreck that I am without him, and how he can change wrecks into something else. And when I recognize the fact that God loved me so much, even though he's perfect and I've got all this stuff, and he still loved me. And then at the same time, and he saves me because I accept his son as my savior. And when I think of that, all I can want to do and ever want to do is share that love with someone else. That's all I want, because that to me, I ponder that, just setting out, like you said, out fishing, just looking at the water. And I'm amazed that God in his perfection would want to save me. And because of that love, I have to extend the same kind to these young ladies over here and whoever it is, and want to tell someone and say, look, this God that I serve will take a wreck, will come after a wreck.
Right.
Man,
That's it right there.
come after a wreck.
I think that's it right there. The word love. Love is such a, oh gosh, a strong word today.
Yeah.
And it's used so many different ways. A parent can tell the child, I love you, and they still whipping their butt. Pain.
And
Is that what you're associating it with?
And I'm wondering if that's, because as I revisit the questions, the original question perhaps was the church's role to support you, or, is the church's role to support or to condemn, or both? And we kind of talked and we said, yes, yes, yes. But then we said, but do it in the spirit of love. And so I'm wondering, and I don't want us to read into something. I was just wondering, is now this comes about, so what is love? If we say, do it in the spirit of love. If we reclaim the young adults, do it in the spirit of love. So what is love? And I think, Brother Small, your definition is just that
Yes.
we, as Jesus showed us love, we exemplify that same love in everything that we do. Love is patient. So if Jesus was patient with us, why can't we be patient with the young adults? If love is gentle, and Jesus has always been gentle with us, why can't we exemplify those same attributes?
Emphasis comment that says we give people what, I'm sorry. There's emphasis comment that says we give people what we think they need instead of asking what they need.
Okay.
So what Ms. Doris was saying, what is love? Are we giving my definition of love, or are you giving me your definition of love? What are you doing? Are you asking?
Okay.
That's what I was saying. Thank you.
And of course, you know, I use my phone a lot, so you know I Google everything. And so, you know, of course, I Google what are the biblical definitions of love, and of course they started talking about all of them. But of course, the greatest and the highest level of love, of course, is agape love, the selfless, the universal love. And then when I look at how they talk about the three types of agape love, it talks about, you know, of course, the romantic love. It talks about the brotherly love, but then it talks about God's divine love or unconditional love. And so it comes, again, I like to use examples.
when we would discipline our sons, we would tell them, we treat you different because you are different. What affects you doesn't affect the other. And it's the same thing with the members of the church body. We treat everybody differently because they are different. They have a different makeup. They have a different personality. And so therefore, sometimes what we try to do is we try to package everything. We want to cookie cutter every situation where this applies to everybody when that's not the case. We don't tend to take the time. And I'm not saying leaders, there's no way a leader can get to know every single person. Now maybe they can. I don't know. But those in my circle that I'm around and I'm spending so much time with, I should get to know who they are, what their makeup is, so that I can meet their expectation of what they believe love is somehow through this conversation that we're having. Go ahead, bro.
Well, I was going to say a whole bunch, but the part of it was going back to what Joe said about answering the first question, love, support, and I forget what the third one, accountability, is loving them with their mess.
Unconditional.
Yeah, the unconditional, but loving them with their mess, loving them through their mess ups.
Yeah.
Okay, knowing that we were a mess and a mess up, loving them through their mess and their mess up is that we are supposed to do as the church.
Never giving up.
Yes, with forgiveness because God forgave us, giving them new mercies because we have new mercies every day. Not beating them over the head with their mistake, but helping them through their mistake. I think that's how we express what the love of the church, helping them through their mistake, as opposed to, shunning them at the door because everybody know what you did. If everybody know what everybody did, then woe was the church. You know what I mean? So just loving them through their mess ups and their mess. What Ann had mentioned when she read about, is it your definition of love or my definition of love? Well, it should be Christ's definition of love, because your definition of love might be like, you kill my cow and kill your dog. That's your definition of love. Well, so it should be the love that she so eloquently read here. Christ's definition of love is what we're supposed to display as a church to the young person or whoever it is. But talk about the young people so that the young people, so that then when they make a mistake or they are in their mess up, they don't stay in their mess up. They feel so comfortable that they could come out, they can go to that person that will help them through their mess up instead of staying in it and getting deeper and deeper and deeper in it. That's the love. The accountability part is, okay, I done helped you through it. Like Jesus since we're talking about the woman at the well, he was like, look, don't do it again. So we need to do that. Show them, you was with all these people, they ain't your husband. So we can just tell that young person, okay, now look, you did this. But there's a better way. We have to show them the better way. And then when they go out and they mess that up again, we need to tell them again, there's a better way. When they go out and mess up again, there's a better way. And pretty soon that better way is going to click, because we didn't always get their better way on the first time. I'm still trying to get the better way on some things, So we don't always get the better way on the first thing.
And this kind of takes us back to where we were in the beginning of the program about the bad apple. That's the one thing they don't want to run into if they do have a situation going on, is that bad apple.
Right. Yeah.
So that's so important. Yeah.
But I'm gonna throw a glitch in there, because that's what I love to do, which is one of the things we need to remember. It's not a one way, it's a two way. So therefore, a lot of times, like you just said, love them through it. Sometimes they need to love me through and be like, Miss Kim, you know, how you were acting last week wasn't copacetic.
Yeah.
And then they're holding me accountable as well. It's not just, yes, because it's not just they learn from us. We learn from them. And if we always act like it's a one-way deal, we're doomed to fail.
And you know, I'm sorry.
Go-
That comes by having them at the table. You know what Judge Kataja Brown Jackson said when she gave her acceptance speech when she was talking yesterday? She says, I have a seat at the table.
Thank you.
And so with the young people, we need to allow them to have a seat at the table, a seat at the table of leadership, a seat at the table of ministry, a seat at the table of accountability, a seat at the table of whatever goes on in the church. They need to have a seat at the table. As Brother Pastor said here, something about channeling through the growth or something that you said, and leadership needs to move out the way sometime. And so there needs to be an apprenticeship. So young people, I remember one young lady said at the first part, she has all this experience in finance, they won't let her be in a finance committee. Okay, well, you know, how are we going to train somebody that we don't let them be at the finance committee?
Right.
You know, and I, you know, going back, Pastor Mike said it's the only church I've ever been in, and I had an early career in banking. Well, Pastor Schultz, he was like, he saw that. And he pulled me in and he says, I need for you to be here on the finance committee. I was the youngest person on the finance committee because he saw that I had that background. I didn't ask to be in it. He saw it, and he saw that was a need that would keep me there. And there was also a need that probably the finance committee had. But that brought me in, and that was like the hook, line, and sinker. You always see these young people that have the potential that we see in them, but do we hook them and bring them in? And so that's what we need to do. We just see them. We don't, you know, you're really good, but do we give them anything to bring them in? And I, you know, I don't think we do. So just to repeat myself, the fourth close, what we need to do, we need to give them a seat at the table and allow their voice to be spoken at the table.
Yeah.
Kids.
You got our vote?
One more, also in that, I think we're going to have to learn how to give some things up too. Because sometimes what we're doing, this is not what God intended for us to do. Actually, it's that person out there, but we've been doing it, but we don't want to let go of some things. And there's a lot of times, just like you said, Pastor Schultz said, hey, I need you over here. And there was probably somebody on there going, no, that's my spot. But we need to let some things go because some of the things we're doing them out of the fact that no one else was doing them and not because we was supposed to do them. So we need to let some things go when those opportunities show up like that.
And you know, Pastor, you asked a question and we all were kind of like, what was that question? When you talked about relationship, what is the true heart of the matter? I think a lot of the stuff that we just said answered that question about what is the true heart of the matter when it comes to relationships, because I'm going to tell you now, I need her, and her to help me with you so I don't go to jail.
That's the true heart of the matter.
You know, because I'm telling you, our true heart of my true heart of the matter is that I want to see young people do well and to grow and to flourish and to have, you know, as my parents would say, we want you all to do better than we did.
Yes.
And so therefore, the only way I know that they're going to do better than I did is to introduce them to Christ, to show them the love of Christ, to show them, you know, that they are a masterpiece made in God's image.
Ready. Yep.
However, some of the stuff they do makes me want to hurt them. I'm just being real. I mean, that's just who I am. So therefore, without them, because what they probably say to me is, Miss Kim, hold on, it ain't that serious. Calm down. This is, you know, they can explain to me what I take as being rebellious and disrespectful and just, ooh, and they're just like, okay, why is that? They will look at it and say, why does that even bother you?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it and it's like, why doesn't it bother you? But again, we're back to the gap. There's a gap because of my generation and what we think respect is, and showing respect and showing honor. Theirs is different. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different.
Another question was, kids crave structure and stability. Outside of these two things, what is your what is your idea of tradition? Kids crave structure and stability. Outside of these two things, what is your idea of tradition?
Well, I like to say, one of the things that I think about is when I've gone to church pretty much all my life, God knows. But I was always hearing as I was growing up when it came down to communion. And I often thought you'd only do that on the first Sundays. If you did it any other time, you was, I don't know, taboo or something going to happen to you. It didn't mean nothing then. But as you read into the Bible and you read a little further, there was a key word in there that kept coming up, and the word was often as you do this. Now, I know a little bit about English, not a whole lot, but the word often means just what it says. And when you think about why you're doing it, it gets kind of, it almost, it feels good to you almost, like, wow, I can do this on Monday because I'm feeling good about it because I know what it's all about. And I can do it again on Saturday, and it's not the first though, but I'm okay. See, no one ever told me that as I was growing up. And so I didn't understand, but now I understand I can do it tomorrow. And I can also do it on Wednesday. Because the word often tells me I can. So young people don't get that. They see one thing, and that's what they stick with. I did, until I knew the difference. So that word tradition can really mess you up.
Yeah.
It can really mess you up.
If I might help the panelists a little bit, I hope I'm not too far off. I think that structure is stability, but the idea of tradition goes back to what I said. Traditionally, you can think that you're absolutely right, and traditionally that communion concept was one, only to discover that you were absolutely wrong. And so I do not believe that the church has been off, but I do believe that such a time as that and such a time as this, the church will be the church. It's just that the leaders have got to get us back on the mark as it relates to the interpretation and discovering. I grew up during a period where on one side of the railroad track was the Baptist church. On the other side of the track, we said was the sanctified church.
Yeah.
And we thought that we were absolutely right by calling them the sanctified church, only to discover we're sanctified too.
Thank you.
But out of our traditional ignorance,
There you go.
we labeled them the sanctified church. And so out of our traditional ignorance, we think that we're creating structure when the reality of it is we're driving people out of the church. Is that really necessary? What does that have to do with my soul being saved? Whatever that is, that tradition. Understand it's not really giving me structure and stability. It's really giving me a door to walk out of, not into.
Well, and I would say that when we come together in corporate worship and we're learning together in Bible studies, it's creating the structure and the stability that we need to mature into members of society that are functioning in a godly manner. And what it is it's that thing that you know that's good that doesn't change. So when we're here, our structure and our stability, we know that right is right, wrong is wrong. We know that we're supposed to forgive. We know that we're supposed to do this. We know that we're supposed to do this. And we know that, are we really trusting God? Well, what does trusting God look like? What does forgiving God? Joe did a lesson on freedom in Christ. And I looked at him and I said, I don't really know how to forgive. People say you're supposed to forgive, but what is that process to forgiving? How do you really forgive? And as we come into the church and as we learn and as we're taught and as we put things into practice, that structure and stability of that structure of the church adds stability in our lives. And it adds stability in our families as we're moving forward, as we're teaching. Doesn't mean that young people, they're going to make their own decisions, just like we did. They're going to walk their own walk. They're going to make their own mistakes. As long as all of us are living and breathing, we're going to make a mistake. We're going to have to ask God for forgiveness. We're going to have to shed.
But with some of that structure, there's some things that you're not going to do.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
so it's our job to lay that out. And there's some things you say they're going to make their decision, do it anyway, but some they're going to fall back to, that one's just a bit too much for me. I'm not going to do that one.
Right.
And so that's when they crave structure and stability. We still supposed to lay out structure and stability. And the things that they would do, they may not do.
Right.
I walk away saying that as we create a foundation of structure and stability, because this is what we all crave, tradition, I'm not saying throw it all out the window, but it must have a purpose. And if your tradition does not have a purpose, then you have to question, why am I doing this?
I think in explaining the tradition.
Yes.
I mean, you've done a great job explaining how we do things traditionally. And then you can, you better accept it because you know what it is, why we do things, like when you talk about why they covered the communion table with the white sheet, why, the tipping out with the finger, explaining the tradition as opposed to just doing the tradition blindly. And when you explain the tradition, then you know that 9 times out of 10 it has nothing to do with my soul. It's just the way stuff was handed down, and it's better received, I think, if you know why we do what we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another question, do you think that church design or proximity is blocking the spark? This stems from when we talked about vibe and open-mindedness and spark. Do you think that the church design or proximity and design being could be structure and could be a tradition rather, and denomination? Of course, denomination and tradition, each denomination has their own traditions. Don't y'all? Oh.
I got nothing.
Well, it's a difficult question, but I think some of that in there, Reverend Ritchie, when you talked about everyone's used to church being this, this, and this, and you said, hey, what about Saturday night? What about making a change? I think some of that we need to keep in mind that, most of us have started church at 11 o'clock since.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't work, then it doesn't have to be at 11 o'clock.
Right.
And I know that would just, But I think that that's what we have to think in terms of to be effective, especially when I wrote down that Saturday night thing too.
Okay.
If it came to a Saturday night, if that's what it takes to work out for the youth, well then, that's what it takes. And I think that those are the kind of things we need to talk about more within our church and listen to youth, because I think when they talk to us, they'll tell us eventually. And then they'll even have questions, like when we were talking about tradition, they'll ask me, because one of them asked me about the dressing. You know, why do we do that? Why do you dress up? And you know what? Many times we don't have an answer. And that's why I thought earlier when you were talking in terms of, you know, explaining why we do some of these things that we do is helpful, but then some of them we may just need to discard.
Yeah, yeah. I think, again, design, as you hit it right on, Brother Small, also design, we've always done it this way. This is our design, 11 o'clock. Everybody, we go to church at 11 o'clock. And then proximity has to do with perhaps maybe that competition thing. Because in the African-American community, anywhere you go, you can find at least 3 churches in a block radius, at least. And that's anywhere, not just Springfield, anywhere. And so with that, as we try to understand how to bring our young people back, also know, and I said it earlier, that every church has its own DNA. What works for one will not work for the next. And a predominantly white church can pack up, move out by the interstate, and they'll still come. Predominantly black church, if we leave the community, we're not going to leave the community. Even when we have moved away from the community, we want to still drive back to the old landmark to go to church. And so these are some things that, here's the original question, these are some things that could very well be hindering the spark of us getting them, because we'll drive across town to go to work, but not to go to church.
But I think you said it, the counteract the competition is for us to cooperate with one another as community. If we're going to affect our community, which we're all populated in, like you said, in proximity on the same side of town, why can't we come together and do more programming events together? Because like you said, I think we talked earlier, we all got small pockets. Some of us may be a little bit bigger than others, but we're still driving the same message, which is the good news. So if we got good news and we got good events happening, they coming. And when we come together and have a purpose and why we're doing what we're doing, and they know why we have the purpose. But as we said, we want to bring them to the table to make sure that's something that they really want to do, as opposed to imposing something that they don't want to do. And so I think the cooperation, the partnershiping is where we have to go and to counteract this decline as we're talking about as we move forward.
Yeah.
And the partnership has to include little nuances that will be thorns in people's side. For example, what if the young people come in with their hair covered and they're male? In some places, you know, the first thing people say is, young man, you need to take off that hat. Well, why do I need to take off the hat? You know, we need to recognize and know that sometimes they're wearing a hat because they're embarrassed of how their hair looks, because it hasn't been done or whatever. I mean, so sometimes in our coming together, those things that bother some may not bother others. But as everybody mentioned, what's the primary goal? the primary goal is to introduce them to Christ, right?
And then down the road, they take their heart.
And then down the road, they take it.
Absolutely.
But right now, that's
Tradition out.
right. So there's certain things that we have to do, and we have to recognize. You know, I had somebody that said that their son had started, you know, kind of receding, and so they didn't like that, and so they wore a hat. Well, just as soon as they were like, "Hey, take that hat off," it was out. Turn around, leave. Well, now what have we done?
Right.
Yeah.
Is it really that serious? So, I mean, I just want to, you know, I like to throw those little things in there. So I just threw
And that's good, Madam Panelist. It's if we're going to regain, recover, reclaim our young adults, then we have got to get beyond the petty things, the little things that does not mean anything, such as those things.
Well, it's like, you know, fishing. You know, I fish a lot. You put the right kind of bait on there, you'll get it. You'll get it. They take time. And once you get it in there, you might let it swim around a little bit, float in the water some, before you do what you're going to do to it. As time go by, you might say, you know, you don't have to take your cap no more. You can leave it here. I'll take it for you. You go ahead on over there and sing.
And sometime that nasty bait is not what you want to use, but I want to catch the fish. So I've got to be willing to do what I don't want to do.
Like Peter.
But the end results will be I reclaimed.
Right.
There you go.
Well, the Bible says, "To win souls, one must be wise."
And then what does one, how does one get beyond the point of acknowledging, feeling, and working through hurt to get to the other side and again become functional, active in any and all areas of life? We'll hear comments from the panelists, but Pastor said.
I think that's a process, and I think goes back to that question of support, providing support groups in that particular type area and walking them through the steps. So it's actually opening up the opportunity for them to have a platform or to have a space, a safe space, to be able to have those conversations, whether it's forgiveness, it's hurt, restoration, whatever that situation may be. You open up that opportunity for the support, the gathering, and what goes on in that room stays in that room. So we got to be very careful about that too, because confidentiality is very important. And so that's kind of how you build your trust as well. So I think those are some of the things we could actually put in place to move forth in that direction. But yeah, that's definitely a deep question. But it's a process, and each individual person is different in how they deal with that process as well. So we got to know, first of all, it's hurt. And then how do I deal with the hurt, and the baby to deal with the hurt? Everybody's not qualified to deal with that as well. So let's be clear about that. So making sure you have the right people around the table that can help in those particular type areas as well would be great. So that's kind of bringing in some of those community organizations, some people that actually have those expertise in those particular type areas to make sure that they're in the space and actually providing probably more deeper opportunities besides the support group, workshops, and those type of things to move forward in that area.
I agree, because you don't want to put a Band-Aid on it.
Okay. I'm just, as you were talking, I was reading through some of the last few questions, and we have pretty much covered those in our discussion today. That last question about getting beyond the hurt, as I flip the card over, that goes, that's not just young adult church hurt. That's the hurt of losing a job, losing a loved one, the hurt of going through a divorce. How do I get past that to get back functional in the church? Because as we listened in the first setting from the young adults, there are still some hurt that people are going through, and it has pulled them out of the church, never to come back again. And so how to get back in there.
I'd like to say thank you, panelists. Give our panelists a hand clap of praise, if you would. We realize that there are so many other things you could have been doing on a Saturday, such as fishing, but instead you were here with us, and thank you so much. We're going to, of course, later do a debrief to, we don't want to just do something, but we want to intentionally come back with strategies that will reclaim that millennial and Gen Z age. Thank you again for being here. Will you join me, if there are no other remarks, will you join me in a word of prayer? Oh God, here we stand. We say thank you for how you have come into our midst, and you have allowed us to feel you on the altars of our heart simply through communication and talking. We have come together, oh God, in this place, this appointed place, and sat at the table whereby to bring up questions, concerns that you will give us answer. We will hear your still small voice, and you will give us an answer, not a Baptist answer, not a Methodist answer, Church of God in Christ, but God, an answer that comes from you. It is our desire, as it is yours, O God, that you're not willing that anyone should be lost, but everyone should be saved. And so, God, allow us to be the vessel, the instrument of your love that will bring those who once were in the church actively and active and involved, bring them back to the church. As many have said, we want to give them a place at the table, oh God, that they will bring, that they'll be able to be used by you at that table of ministry. God, we praise you now. Dismiss us from this building, but never from your presence. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.